am live. I am reading out of Lord of the Horizon. This is the story of Ra-Ab, Ancient Egypt. It's a far memory book by Joan Grant, who passed away in 1989. She was born in 1907, and she wrote 7 books of her far memories. We are here in part 3, chapter 3, Magic of PTAH. Mary, to my relief, put no obstacle in the way of the marriage, though she was momentarily distressed that Becket wished to stay with Neri's mother until after the ceremony. But when I said that it was wise that Becket should get to know her new kinswoman, and that as Neri was nomarch it would be according to tradition for the marriage to take place in his nome instead of his and ours, any lingering doubts she may have had were dispelled. At last Becket will appreciate beautiful clothes, she said contentedly. She will need even more than I did, for when we were married, you were not yet nomarch. I shall give her some of my bracelets, and Neku must design some more for her. And of course she will need headdresses and necklaces as well. Then she must have her own furniture. I will have it painted with animals, for that will be sure to please her. You must look at the tallies of the things Father sent with me, and she'll have twice as much. Shall we travel by road or water? I think we should go by river, for we shall have so much to take with us. After a great deal of thought, Mary decided that Becket's wedding dress should be of white mist linen, embroidered with little blue hairs, and that Neku should design jewels of silver and lapislazuli for her to wear with it. Mary chose all our gifts to Becket, leaving to me only the selection of the treasure which would be given to Neri in Becket's name. But there was one gift I chose myself, 2 young moose deer, small as hunting dogs, which had been brought from the far south by one of the men I had sent there to search for medicinal plants. I looked after them myself, and soon they became accustomed to being handled. They were clean and gentle, very intelligent and affectionate. Mary soon grew fond of them. She let them come into her rooms whenever they wished, and often helped me to feed them. I had a little house made for them, the size of a large chest. One side of it was barred, and it had a handle at each end so that it could easily be carried. It was in this that they usually slept, so that when they were taken in it down to the boat, they would not be frightened. Sometimes I wondered whether Mary became so absorbed in the gifts for Becket to try to make herself forget how we missed the sound of our daughter's voice. Often in the middle of talking on an entirely different subject, she would suddenly say, "Becket is going to be very happy," as though trying to reassure herself. I knew that she was secretly worried lest Becket had stayed in the hair only because of the estrangement. She tried to hide this fear from me, yet often unconsciously betrayed it. I remember her saying, "As soon as I met you, Ra-Ab, I was impatient to leave my home. Even if I had been much closer to Father than I was, I should have wanted to leave him, so that I could be alone with you. Do you remember what a terrible waste of time it seemed, having to wait until we were betrothed?" "I'm glad that Becket had the courage to refuse to be parted from Neri," I said. "Do you remember how we hated leaving the island on the evening we told each other of our love? If we had not had to work for the watchers, I should never have let you go back to the royal city. Do you remember how I wanted you to come to the Oryx with me at once?" "It will be different when Amenemhet wishes to marry," she said. "He won't have to go away from us. He doesn't seem very interested in women, does he?" "That's what they used to say about me. Yet, have you found me take too little interest in you? You are my most perfect husband. Even if I could remember all the hundreds of times I must have been married during the long years, I should still say so. You have only one fault. You make me pity all other women because they are not married to you." It was 2 months later, 7 days before Becket's 14th birthday, that we started on our journey to the gnome of the hair. With us came Amenemhet, Senusert, Nekit, and 100 of our friends and kingsmen, together with their attendants. The boats, of which there were 20, were garlanded with flowers and gay with pennants. Neri was on the landing stage to meet us and said that by his mother's request, Becket had agreed to wait for us at the house. It was only a short distance from the river, so we went on foot along a wide avenue, lined with festival masts flying the white and blue of the air, alternatively with the yellow and white of the oryx. A laughing, excited crowd had gathered to see us, and when I had known nothing, even if I had known nothing of Neri, they would have shown me that he was well loved by his people. He was telling Senusert how greatly he and Becket had been honored by the magnificence of Pharaoh's gifts. I smiled to myself to hear the two boys talking so formally, each so conscious of his young dignity. I thought of them returning covered with mud from some adventure which had included crossing a marsh or an unexpectedly deep ditch, or pummeling each other at the height of a quarrel. I realized that Amenemhet was thinking along the same lines, for he whispered to me, "How very royal we are all being," he grinned. "Do you think Becket will expect me to place her foot on my forehead in sign of humility, or will she be content to leave that privilege to the royal wife?" Cebu was waiting to greet us at the top of the steps, which led up from the outer courtyard, but to my surprise there was no sign of Becket. "I wonder where she is," I said to Amenemhet. "Surely she hasn't grown shy." "If they have made her lose her self-confidence, I shall carry her off home, and if knocking Neri down isn't sufficient, the two gnomes had better go to war." I began to feel anxious. Why wasn't Becket here? Why hadn't she come to the landing stage? Was she afraid of meeting Neri? Did that mean she still felt bitter towards her mother? I wondered if Mary was worried, but when I looked round I saw she was laughing at something that Tetahinan had just said to her. Cebu was a tall, spare woman, looking older than her 40 years. Her life had not been happy as a young woman. She had lost both her daughters in the pestilence, and a few years later her husband had been killed in battle. She had been well content to leave authority in the hands of her brother, though I felt sure she had kept herself fully informed of everything that was done in the name of her son. I saw Neri raise his eyebrows in an unspoken question. She shook her head and said something to him in a low voice. I only heard the words, "She won't listen soon, I think." We were all puzzled. At Becket's absence, but no one had the courage to ask outright where she was. At last Mary, trying to make her voice sound casual, said to Cebu, "I hope that Becket is well. Her health matches her happiness, both, may the gods be praised, are perfect." With this, we had to be content, and Cebu led us into a long room which opened on one side to formal gardens that flowed down to the river. "You must be impatient to see Becket," said Cebu, "but she will be with us in a moment. The dear child was so excited that I told her to rest before your arrival. They must have forgotten to wake her, and I expect she is delaying to make herself beautiful for you." I saw Mary look at Cebu with a new respect and could almost hear her thinking, "You must be a very remarkable woman if you have made Becket so interested in her appearance that she has become more important to her than greeting her parents, We were served with wine or cool fruit juices, and girls who wore blue tunics and wreaths of convolvulus offered little cakes on alabaster dishes. I knew that Cebu was growing increasingly impatient at Becky's absence, though she tried to conceal it with a bright flow of conversation. To try to put her at ease, Mary said, "I think it is so wise of you to let the child sleep. She will have told you that there is little formality in the oryx, and she has never been respectful of the hours." Cebu took this as an indication that we no longer thought it necessary to wait for Becket. "As all of you will wish to rest after your journey," she said, "it would perhaps be best if I take you and your husband to your apartments, and Beckett can join you there. We followed her through 3 communicating rooms into a wing which ran west from the main building. Having made sure that we had everything we required, she left us. Ra-Ab, what has happened to Beckett? That's what I'd like to know. It can't be anything serious, or Neri would have told us at once. I watched him carefully to see if he was angry that she wasn't there, and I think he was watching me to see if I was angry. You don't think she's trying to avoid us, do you? Not you, but me, I mean. Do you think she hasn't forgiven me for being so horrid? Of course she's forgiven you, and there wasn't anything to forgive. I love her so much, Ra-Ab, much more than even you realize. I know you do, my very dear. Suddenly she caught hold of my arm. Ra-Ab, what's that? I listened and heard a moan of pain rising to a wail. Ra-Ab, somebody's ill. Perhaps it's Beckett, and they're trying to hide it from us. I tried to give my voice a assurance I did not feel. No, I'm sure it's not Beckett, but it might be. Oh, Ra-Ab, I'm frightened. I'll go and find out what it is. I'll come with you. It's come from over there. We'll go that way. I expect all the rooms open on the garden. Again I heard the wail and broke into a run. I pulled open the door of a room next to those allotted to us. The shutters were closed, and for a moment I could see nothing outside the shaft of dazzling sunlight which shone through the open door. Then I heard Beckett's voice. Shut the door or you'll frighten her. Tell someone to go fetch Neri. He must come here at once. She's very ill. Beckett was crouched beside the bed on which lay her patient. She was looking down at a dark face, puckered with pain, from whose lips came a pitiful whimpering. Hurry, she said imperiously. I told you to fetch Neri. Then she looked up and saw us. Oh, I'm so glad you've come. Sybil will be cross because I wasn't there to meet you. Or she would be if Neri ever let her be cross with me. Do you understand? You understand, don't you? I couldn't leave her while she's in pain. Of course you couldn't, said Mary. She knelt and put her arms around Beckett. Ra-Ab, can you go and find Neri, and I'll stay here to help you. She's having a baby, isn't she? Yes, but it seems to have got stuck. I was with her sister when her baby was born, but then it was quite easy. She wanted me to hold her hand, but she wasn't in this awful pain. I wish Jan was here, said Mary, but he let me help him when some of our women couldn't have their babies easily, so I may have learned enough to be useful. Then she glanced up at me. Ra-Ab, go and fetch some hot water, very hot, and some cloths. Heat may help to relieve the spasms, and get me a flask of oil. You will find it in my toilet case. I decided that this was more important than fetching Neri, and being fortunate enough to meet a servant who was carrying a jar of hot water to one of the other guests, it was only a short time before I was back. Wring out one of the cloths in the water, said Mary. I did so, and very gently she laid it on the contorted belly. Then she asked for the oil and poured some of it on her fingers. Hold her hands tightly, Beckett. I'm afraid this may hurt her. If the baby is pressing against the bone, I may have to try to move it. Ra-Ab, hold her feet in case she struggles. The frantic whimpering broke out again. My poor, poor dear, said Beckett in an anguished voice. You will soon be better. Mother will make you better. It's going to be all right, said Mary. I can feel the baby's arm. Give me some more oil, Ra-Ab, and press very gently on the pit of her stomach. Now I can feel its head. It's coming down into my hand. Again a shrill wail of pain, and Mary's voice saying triumphantly, Look, it's all right. It's alive. You needn't hold her now. It doesn't matter if she struggles, and I don't think she will. Give me a cloth to wrap the baby in. It mustn't get cold. Isn't it lovely? Exclaimed Beckett. He's much more beautiful than his cousin was. Look at his lovely little hands. The baby set up a curious shrill squealing. Ought you to go back to his mother, or shall I look after him? Asked Mary. She's not ready for him yet. If you like, he can sleep in our room. Look, he's not at all frightened of me. A little black hand was curled around Mary's finger. There were tears in Beckett's eyes. Oh, Mother, you're so much, much more lovely even than I thought you were. We all embraced each other, and I was so happy that I was grateful to the semi-darkness which hid the tears in my eyes. I had been so afraid that Mary and Becket might find it difficult to open their hearts to each other again. That meeting in an atmosphere of formality might have made a constraint between them. But the gods had been very generous and allowed no barriers to grow between these two women whom I so dearly loved, arranging for them to meet where the magic of PTAH, which is manifested at every birth, allowed them to see each other as they really were. The baby gave another shrill cry, and a muffled shout seemed to echo it from the garden. Becket exclaimed, "That's the baby's father. I told them to keep him shut up until his baby was born. I wonder who let him out." The door swung open. The father looked very suspicious, but when Becket said to him, "No one is going to hurt your family," he sprang on the bedplace and crouched down beside his wife. She snuggled up to him, and he patted her consolingly. "I let him see his son," said Mary. "You had better let me do it," said Becket. "He's not very friendly except to people he knows." "He won't mind me. He knows I'm his friend." She put the baby in the crook of its mother's arm. The father leaned forward and sniffed it affectionately, and the mother put her free arm around her husband's neck. Mary slipped one hand in mine and the other in Becket's. "Two families," she said happily. Then she smiled up at me. "He looks nearly as proud of his baby as we were of Becket. Oh, Mother, I'm so happy. I was such a fool not to understand that you loved monkeys as much as I did. Nor did I until you taught me to open my heart to them." So it was a monkey. That was chapter 3. The next chapter is chapter 4, Younger Brothers. Today is the 8th of April.